Good morning, everybody. And if there's dogs barking in the background or kids being a nudge, don't worry about it. You're all on mute. So thank you once again for joining us today. And I hope everybody is well and safe out there. And at least on the East Coast today, we're all hunkered down with the impending storm. So please be safe on a lot of different levels out there today. And welcome to our virtual session of the Manufacturing Cabinet. It's quite a change from our last session back at the Marriott, listening to Shah Dabari from Picatinny Arsenal speak about the great public and private partnership on promoting STEM careers with our youth and advancing our workforce. And once this nation comes out from under this pandemic, we look forward to the old traditional get together with dinner, some refreshments, and some networking. So that's all work towards that end. Okay. For those of you who are joining us from the manufacturing community, including our panelists today, on behalf of everybody out there in our region, we thank you for your efforts, your conscientiousness, and keeping the supply chain intact and operational. You've really kept a lot of families and businesses together in these difficult times. Our mission in establishing the Manufacturing Cabinet, Rachel, if you could move forward to the mission slide, is very simple, and it's presented right in front of you. In short, it's to celebrate all the companies in this sector. We develop networks, we share innovation, and we represent our stakeholders in emerging areas, legislation, trends, best practices that affect all of us. So we are certainly proud to serve as stewards of this important sector as part of our cabinet. And the spotlight today is on an important piece of the manufacturing industry, aerospace and defense. And we saw the SpaceX capsule splash down over the weekend, and it brought back a lot of great memories on our exploration of space. And for all you Trekkies out there, Captain Kirk coined it the final frontier. So we hope you will find our panel of experts and their insight to be very informative. Their bios are provided to each of you on the screen, and they have a lot of commonalities. They're all crazy smart. They bring a lot of innovation, engineering, and solutions to their customers and our armed forces. So let's start first. I'm going to introduce Megan Husher from the the president of the Morris County Chamber of Commerce to introduce our first panelist. Megan, I'll turn it to you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for joining us today on our rainy Tuesday. Hopefully you're all safe. So I first want to thank Jim and Rachel of Withum for coordinating this event, and also to our fellow partners, Somerset County Business Partnership and the New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program, both of whom, like the Morris County Chamber, have been working hard remotely, virtually, to support our business community, and also with boots on the ground during this challenging time. To look forward to hearing from our panelists today about their perspective on this important industry sector. As Jim said, I am the president and CEO of the Morris County Chamber of Commerce. We also have an economic development, and we are fortunate in Morris County, which truly is an extraordinary place with a diverse economy, to have such a robust aerospace and defense sector, which contributes millions to the overall gross regional product of our state and region. We have over 7 industries and 30 companies that directly contribute in this sector, and of course thousands employed both directly and indirectly. In terms of manufacturing, we have hundreds of manufacturing companies in the county alone. So if you haven't noticed, they're located on side streets. In particular, I think of Howmet Aerospace in Dover that many people don't even know is there, tucked away. So I encourage you to really champion this industry, spread the good word about how robust it is in our state. And I thank you for being with us today. I'm really pleased to introduce our first panelist, General William Marshall. Bill is a distinguished leader who has spent years serving the public good. Before joining NJII, the New Jersey Innovation Institute, which is affiliated with NJIT, Bill served more than 35 years in the New Jersey National Guard, where he achieved the rank of Brigadier General. Overlapping with most of this, he spent 29 years with the Montclair, New Jersey Police Department, where he retired as captain. His work on the Department of Defense's Advanced Development of Asset Protection Program has received national acclaim, was recently mentioned in the Army's Gold Book, recognizing significant contributions to the DoD. So we're pleased to have Bill with us today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of Joel Bloom, the president of NJIT, and Simon Nyans, the CEO of NJII, I truly appreciate this opportunity to be with you this morning. We're going to play a short video that kind of sets the stage for the rest of my presentation, and will also set a tone for the folks who really do the beans, beef, and bullets to be able to support the warfighter. So Rachel, if you'd run that video, please.
ADAPT is looking at disruptive technologies that are readily available and seeing how we can actually apply them to be able to benefit the warfighter.
So one of the benefits for ADAPT is to look at both readiness and modernization. How do we fight today's battle and keep our current stuff up and running? What technologies can we bring into those existing systems? As well as how do we modernize the Army for the future battle of future fights?
Quinergy is a small company that does power solutions, and we try to take ideas to manufacturing pretty quickly. One of the projects is actually a thermal battery project that's actually part of ADAPT. Another one we are developing is an energy harvester, which is essentially a micro dynamo. It's a very, very tiny dynamo. And so it reduces the weight for the warfighter. So hence the warfighter doesn't have to carry as much.
So one of the benefits of using the 3D printed buckles, we can 3D print these at point of need to allow for a rapid turnaround time to replace simple items that otherwise would have long lead times.
We're a test group and a system integrator. So we take those devices and figure out how to test them. The one specifically that we've worked on so far was the 40 millimeter wrap antennas. 3D printed wrap antennas to go inside of a 40 millimeter projectile. And so what we did, we took these projectiles, made them operational, and then fired them.
So when in ADAPT, the beauty of it is we have a university, so very early stage ideas are there. Also, you have a bunch of companies that come with different resources and different expertise.
So NJII for ADAPT manages the Agile Innovation Management process, where we bring together industry, academia, the customer, which is the Army, to rapidly co-create solutions for the warfighter.
And by having these ideation sessions where you have different groups of experts cross-collaborating and sharing ideas and taking those and running with them, and it's one of those examples where the sum of the pieces are much better than the individual parts.
We have flexible antennas. This is an electrically conductive fabric that we can put certain patterns into to do antennas that conform to the shape of the helmet.
We don't necessarily worry about who's going to get credit. We really just have this singular goal of getting a technology developed and put out and implemented.
Every engineer that works at the Department of Defense should spend some time with the guy who's getting the system at the end. It really kind of gets you focused on, hey, these guys need this capability and the threat's out there now and they need it yesterday.
So these tunnel safing robots are as a result of a real world problem. This issue was coming out of Korea, and we've been able to 3D print these robots, and they become a consumable that we can leave behind so someone doesn't have to go into a tunnel system where you can't see around the turn. So something like this means someone like me doesn't have to go in that tunnel.
So the ADAPT project is federally funded through the Congress, and I thank the New Jersey delegation. Every time I see them, they have been extremely supportive of all of the base operations throughout the state. And I think that's important that they be included in everything that we do. So next slide. That's the consortium members, and the reason I bring them up is because of what Jim Zanino from Picatinny talked about, the sum of the parts. And these are the parts that we do asset and resource mapping to. Next slide. And as you can see, they cover the spectrum when you look at the manufacturing world to be able to provide that development for the warfighter, but also to be able to transition technologies into commercial opportunities. Next slide. Link, leverage, and align. What do they have that we need that could be applied now? So on the far left, those are the Army imperatives for modernization. And on the right is a presentation from the Defense Manufacturing Conference that we were invited to, which showcased ADAPT. Next slide, please. This shows the Agile Innovation Management Cycle, where we actually sit down with, as Mike Vandersloot from NJII described, the customer, the folks that are the providers, some really smart folks out of academia, and start to look at a co-development process in collaboration with everyone that looks at the executables. What is deliverable, when, and how? Next slide, please. I just want to make one comment at the end. I'm not an engineer, but I am an operator, and I'll be followed by the people that keep the foundries and forges of freedom operating. Thank you.
General Marshall, thank you so much for your presentation. For a couple of you that may have had technical difficulties with the video, again, we'll have links to the presentation itself for you to look at on a postmortem basis. I'd like to introduce one of the greatest advocates I've ever seen for the manufacturing community, John Kennedy, who is the President and CEO of the New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program. John, take it away.
Thanks, Jim, and I love these events. It's been, I think, 3 years since you sat us down and discussed how we could do, something in these two key counties. As Megan brought up, she mentioned hundreds in Morris County. There's actually 839 manufacturers in Morris County. I'm a Morris County boy, so I tend to memorize those numbers. But if you add in Somerset and the work that's done in Somerset, it's over 1,300 companies. Now tie in STEM companies, and you have 2,000 companies that are producing some great stuff. Not to mention Picatinny Arsenal, and we'll draw a line around NJIT and NJII for you, Bill, just to make sure we'll come get you, because that's important stuff. I get the honor of introducing Cliff Lindholm, because Cliff is a long-term friend of mine, and we found we have a lot of things in common over the years, but one of the things that Cliff might not be aware of is that I owned and ran a company called Barnett Industries that actually is now on its 174th year of activity in New Jersey. I was just a caretaker there for a while. It's moved from Irvington to Harrison, but it still keeps kicking out. Cliff, with Falstrom from, I believe, 1870-ish, that's amazing numbers when you look at that. And the only reason a company is able to keep going like that is with people like Cliff at the helm who can look at things and understand what changes and how his company has evolved to the need and the incredible work that, I've seen being done with the Navy, et cetera. It's just some great stuff. If you add in Cliff's other side where he gets engaged with NJBIA and the chambers and so on, the man makes a difference on a lot of levels, and I'm proud to call him my friend, but I'm also proud to know that he's manufacturing in New Jersey. Cliff?
John, thank you so much for the introduction, and I just want to thank you, John, and what MEP has done during the pandemic. In addition to your tireless advocacy for manufacturing, Falstrom Company found some of the materials and resources that you put out early on in the pandemic when people were really striving for, how do we deal with this stuff? MEP came through with some good resources. And what John didn't mention this morning that I will do, because he usually points out that, one of our common passions is scouting. And as an Eagle Scout, he is stewarding MEP with all the skill that he developed in his scouting career. So thanks for that, John. And good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be a part of the panel this morning. Really happy to talk about the defense industry, aerospace defense industry, and what Falstrom Company is doing in the niche that we have here. Next slide, please. And this is the areas that I'll cover this morning. Just tell you a little bit about Falstrom Company, what we do. John mentioned our history going back to 1870, something we're proud of. Well, I'll be speaking primarily from the perspective of the niche that Falstrom Company operates in, and try and help share with you what I see going on in our niche and in the segments of the defense industry that we serve. Next slide, please. So this is an introduction to Falstrom Company. As John mentioned, we were established in 1870. This was at the time when there was a lot of immigration into the United States. It was, the dawn of the Gilded Age and really start of the Industrial Revolution. And my great-granduncle came over from Sweden and started a small metal fabricating, metal shop in Passaic, serving primarily, customers who needed small metal items made for their home. But then as the Industrial Revolution took hold and the industrial centers here in New Jersey grew, and Newark and Patterson, Passaic, and a lot of the communities in this area, the business was able to grow and support the needs of the factories and became more of a business-to-business manufacturer. We've been in Passaic for our entire 150 years of existence. We have moved from one location to another, but have really found this to be a great location, not only for transport of our goods out to our customer base, which is primarily East Coast, but we do have some customers out in the Midwest area, but also a prime source of labor, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. As you can see, we are primarily a military contractor and serving the military. Says here for about 50 years. It actually goes back to World War II, when anybody who was in manufacturing was supporting the war effort at that time. So long history in working to support the military services. Next slide, please. A little bit more about our history. I mentioned that we did start in 1870, and my relative came over from Sweden. We are a fairly small company, as most manufacturers are in the state of New Jersey, and also we have a niche that we serve. Primarily right now, the large niche is the Navy and naval applications. However, in 2018, we acquired another precision machining business, KD Industries, and that added to our stable of customers and got us into more of the aerospace industry. So we make products that I like to tell our employees that are used at the deepest depths of the ocean and all the way up into outer space. So we cover a lot of ground with the products that we make and the customers that we serve. And see opportunity in continuing in that path over the next several years. We go to the next slide, please. So the business has grown and developed and morphed over the time since 1870 in our 150 years. This is a sampling of some of our current customers. As you can see, we service most of the Tier 1 defense contractors. We have developed relationships with a number of them that and been on long-term programs with all of these customers. These are primarily our naval customers here. And we've developed processes and procedures that have allowed us to get on their approved supplier list. We've developed special processes and got those processes qualified so that we've got approved welding processes, finishing processes, and special joining processes that support a variety of naval applications, whether they're communication systems, Navy nuclear power systems. We do some radar and guidance systems, and a lot, as I mentioned, in the power area. A lot of our components are weldments. And they support the power generation aboard ship, whether it's conventional power like in an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, or nuclear power on the Virginia class, or some of the work that we're now doing for the new Columbia class submarine. Next slide. So I wanted to get a little bit more into what our design, integration, and manufacturing capabilities are to give you a flavor of our fabrication side of the business that supports primarily the naval customer. And I got a couple slides that will illustrate that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this slide illustrates the sort of 5, what I'll call key capabilities by functional output at Fallstrom Company. We have made an effort to really develop our engineering capabilities and vertically integrate our products over the past few years. We've gotten more into system engineering, electrical and mechanical design. And then that 4th box from the left is really our core business on the fabrication side, is enclosure manufacturing. We make a variety of enclosures, steel and aluminum, that support a number of military programs. And you can see some examples of on the pictures below of the products that we make, showing our welding, a cabinet that's in process there for the Arleigh Burke class destroyers, engine control, machinery control. And then the middle and second pictures are of a data link system that we produce for one of our customers that's both on domestic naval vessels as well as foreign military vessels. It's a Link 16 system that allows secure communication. We're working with that same customer now on a next generation combat tactical data link to further our penetration into that market. And so what this is representing is really the variety of capabilities that Fallstrom Company has, and really what we're trying to do to serve our customer through vertically integrating the product and being a resource to them for a wide variety of contract manufacturing requirements. Next slide, please. Taking that just a little bit further, here's an example of some of our value-added services. Again, by output and what those functions will create and produce for our customers. It really represents an evolution of the business over time to where we are really trying to continue to be a partner. We've always been a partner with our customers, but really be a partner in providing additional engineering and manufacturing capabilities, and allow our tier 1 customers to focus more on system integration and push some of the work out of their facility down to a lower cost facility, quite frankly, like Fallstrom Company, where we can allow them to be more competitive in the work that they are competing against, and ultimately, as taxpayers, save us all a couple of bucks. That's what we really want to do. Next slide, please. So as Fallstrom has operated in the defense industry over the past 50, 60, 70 years, we've seen a number of trends, and I think some of the other panelists will concur with these. But in the niche that we're operating in, which is as a contract manufacturer, and I'm talking right now primarily about our naval applications, but I think it applies to the aerospace applications as well. We're continuing to see a push to decrease cycle time and get deliveries coming in quicker. For a couple of reasons. Number one, you want to get the product to the warfighter quicker. You want to make sure that you're keeping your customers' lines up and moving. In addition, as new programs come online, we are continuing to see increasingly complex designs and what I call evolving requirements, particularly on some of our first-time design and development programs. If anybody is familiar with those, the designs, as I said, are complex. Requirements and needs tend to evolve as the program moves through the design development into low-rate initial production, and you have to be able to respond to those changes. Obviously, the third bullet point there, reducing costs, continues to be a very important part of what we do here. It's a competitive industry. There are barriers to entry. Not everybody can come in and be on an approved supplier list and have approved programs, but there is competition, and reducing cost and looking for ways to innovate is a continual drive through all of our programs and from all of our customers. On our naval platforms, obviously a ship has a finite capacity in terms of space and what it can accommodate. So anything we can do to design out size, weight, and power requirements, but still keep and maintain capabilities, makes the product a lot more effective. One of the things that we've been seeing recently, we're primarily a welding house. Welding is one of our core capabilities, but now our naval customers are looking for ways to have a more modular approach, and that's with bolt-together enclosures as opposed to the welded enclosure, which is what we have primarily made before. And this has caused us to look at different ways that we can support our customers, not necessarily through welding, but through mechanical assembly, and working to help them come up with designs that will meet their customers' requirements, meet their system requirements, and also be more modular. The last two bullet points are kind of global, high 10,000 foot comments that I see at least going on, and continue to help me see the naval applications as being critical for the defense industry. Global threats will continue to increase. All you have to do is pick up a newspaper, if you read a newspaper, or go online and check out what's going on around the world, and you can see global powers like China, they're building an island over in South China Sea, and the U.S. Navy continues to do freedom of navigation operations over there. So that's continuing. We're continuing to see global threats, and the Navy will continue to be a very important part of that, because if you look at a crisis, whether it's a threat, a military a threat from our countries, or humanitarian. One of the first ways that the United States tends to respond is sending a Navy ship. We saw that here in the New York area when the pandemic was at its height, and the Navy sent its hospital ship up to the area here to help out with a lot of the medical treatments going on. And finally, this is a general manufacturing concern, focus, and MEP has done a lot to help us with this. The transfer of knowledge from one generation of skilled employees to the next continues to be a very important thing that we look at here at Falstrom Company. I think in industry as a whole, the baby boomers are retiring. We're not seeing as many of our younger people come into manufacturing as we'd like. So as we can transfer knowledge and sort of what we call, sort of the way you make the soup over here, or the tribal knowledge from one generation of skilled employees to the next, that's key to not only maintaining and growing the business, but I think using that information as a foundation for continued growth and innovation. So that is pretty much all I put together for the presentation this morning. Hope it gives you an overview of Falstrom Company and what we see going on in our particular niche of the defense industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Appreciate your involvement in the community of manufacturing, as well as your leadership within the business community here in Northern New Jersey. And hearing about your niche industry and the general earlier on, I'm going to be ambivalent and undecided on who I'm rooting for in the upcoming Army-Navy game, assuming we have an Army-Navy game. So thanks again, Cliff. Megan, I will turn it over to you to introduce Rich Halen, one of your constituent companies out of Morris County.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, I'm so glad Rich could be with us this morning. Some of you may know the company formerly as Arconic, formerly as Alcoa, now Howmet Aerospace, which Rich will explain momentarily. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Halen, who has degrees in mechanical engineering and organizational leadership. Since 2000, he has worked for 3 large diversified manufacturing companies with multi-site structures, helping individual plants develop leadership at all levels and drive business performance. Currently with Howmet Aerospace in Dover, where the company employs over 800 people making super alloy investment castings for jet engines and spacecraft. Thank you, Rich, for being with us.
Thanks, Megan. Can everybody hear me? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So could you advance the slide, and I'll talk a little bit about Howmet and specifically Dover and some of the markets we serve. So who is Howmet and what do we do? I'm going to talk a little bit about the COVID impact on the market, because it's been a significant impact on aerospace, as you can imagine. And then I want to talk about 2 of the more interesting programs that are active in Dover. They're not necessarily the biggest parts of our operation. They are significant, but they're really interesting. I think for the technical people on the call, there'll be some interest in that. And one is military and one is space. If you could advance. So Howmet actually has been around a long time, and it's I think the company itself is over 100 years old, but in Dover, New Jersey, this facility's been here since 1949. We do have about 900 employees on the whole site. About 800 of them are in the casting plant. We also have an alloy manufacturing plant on the same casting, and that plant makes nickel cobalt super alloys for all of the Howmet castings operations and some forging operations. We've gone through a couple business separations. It's a publicly traded company, and when it was Alcoa, it was just being valued as a basic materials company. Alcoa was known for aluminum, so if aluminum prices went up, the stock went up, and the other way around. So a couple years ago, 3 years ago, there was a separation from Alcoa into Alcoa and Arconic, and Arconic was the value add business. But even that still had some really basic products, packaging materials, building materials. and the technology aerospace part was sort of getting lost in the shuffle. So in April of this year, there was a second separation, and now we stand alone as Howmet Aerospace. There is still an Arconic trading stock, and the stock just split into two totally independent companies. Within all of Howmet, our major product categories are castings, forgings, and fasteners. We did retain the wheel group. We make some of the most advanced wheels in the world for trucking and automotive, and that is still part of the Howmet Aerospace, but they're not really aerospace products, but it's a great product line. Within the Dover operation, we really only make one product, and that's an investment casting. It's nickel cobalt superalloys primarily. If you don't know the investment casting process, it's also known as lost wax. The part that you want to end up with is initially made as a replica in wax. That wax piece is then put into a ceramic shell dipping process so that you end up with a ceramic shell surrounding the wax, and then you melt the wax out, and that leaves a cavity inside. And then we pour into that cavity the molten alloy. We do it under vacuum. These are the most advanced castings that you can make in the world. You can go get a cheap sand casting somewhere. That's sort of the bottom end of the casting chain. And then there are various levels of castings. Investment casting is the absolute highest quality. And what Dover does that's even higher level, we actually make single crystal castings where the entire casting is one metallurgical crystal. And what that does is improve the performance under extreme conditions. And in the more modern engines of airplanes and industrial gas turbines and space, the operating temperature in the engines is actually higher than the melt point of the metal that we make our parts from. And there's a lot of sophisticated cooling that goes on to keep the parts from melting. But this is the most advanced casting technology in the world. There are probably less than a dozen companies in the world that can make some of the parts that we make. And within Dover, there are certain parts that we're the only people that can make them. Our market is engine turbine parts. The biggest part of our market is certainly commercial aviation. We do have a lot of military and space. And on the right side, I didn't want to share anything proprietary, and I'm sometimes nervous about what is proprietary. We make parts in Dover that a lot of countries would like to know more about. So I just pulled this off the Howmet public web space. It shows the size of the entire Howmet company, over 40,000 people, 87 locations in 28 countries. It's truly a global business. This is from the 2019 report. Those numbers are probably down because of the COVID impact, but it's a very big, strong, and important company within aerospace and defense on the engine side in particular. If you could go ahead. So the COVID impact really started to hit us in about February to March, and commercial air travel has really dropped almost to nothing. And I threw this graph in here. I find it to be very interesting. If you go back to March 1st, the number of people that went through TSA checkpoints in commercial airports was right at 99% of a year ago. As the COVID hit and there were travel restrictions and fears and stay-at-home orders, that dropped down, and you can see that by April, it was down to around 5% of a year ago. So imagine an industry that's 5% of what it had been a month earlier. And since then, there's been a fairly steady climb back. You can see on 4th of July weekend, it grew quite a bit and then went back down, and it's settled right now at about 26%. And as long as we still have closures and stay-at-homes and things like that, it might take a while for that to go back up. But when you think about what that does to the market, when an airline like United or Delta has airplanes that are sitting on the ground not flying, they really don't need to take delivery on new ones. So they pushed back to Boeing and Airbus and stalled or slowed deliveries. That then goes to the engine builders, which are my customers, GE, Pratt Whitney, Rolls-Royce, and their sub-tiers. So that demand has pushed back, and it goes all the way back to Howmet. So we definitely have seen on the commercial side a pushback on demand. The good thing is that all of those same engine builders, GE, Pratt Whitney, and Rolls-Royce, they all make military engines as well. And there's been high demand in both commercial and military, so they've shifted their focus over to military. They've actually gone back to the military, where there's been a lot of backlog on spare parts and engines. and basically secured new orders to take advantage of this capacity and just shift the approach over to military. So our business is still going very strong in Dover. I've got plans for the second half of this year to actually do better than what my original plan is, and it's really because of military replacing some of the commercial side of it. I do want to say one thing about the COVID itself, and I'm not going to get into the 6-foot distancing and whatnot in terms of what we did. I'm sure everybody on this call has been involved in that. But one of the technologies we found in Dover, and maybe some of you have found it also, we were doing basically 100% active screening using people, and it was costing us a lot of money. We started that back in early April, and we've been doing it to this day. But we found an iPad-type device that is now on each of our doors instead of the badge reader, and it reads the employee's face and recognizes you to a database that you belong there. It measures your temperature to make sure that you don't have a fever, and it also identifies whether you're wearing a mask. And if you don't pass all those tests, the doors don't open. If you do, the doors open. It was to me, it was very economical to get in, and the operating cost is nothing. So if anybody is still looking at access systems and control of people and want to know more about it, it's one of the best things out of this whole COVID thing that we've seen. So go to the next slide, please. So this is one of the programs that is really big within Dover and within Howmet, and it's really the power part. This is the F-35. The engine is the F-135. It's also known as the JSF. It's used by the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. There's multiple variations of this. The picture that's showing is the short takeoff and landing version, where the engine actually rotates and not completely vertical up and down, but it's a very short takeoff, really a great aircraft carrier engine. It's the 5th generation fighter jet. Lockheed Martin is who produces the final product, but Pratt Whitney has the power plant. And it's an amazing engine. And in Dover, we make the blades and the vanes for that engine. Within other Howmet sites, we have other parts as well. And there's been bad press about this program at different times, but if you talk to the people who are the war fighters who are using this is great technology. It's wanted by everybody, and it's doing great things for us. The technology in the engine is interesting to me because I make the parts for it, and it not only has power and efficiency improvements, but they actually modified the engine design so that the signature that comes out on radar contributes to the stealth capability. And I never even thought about that before, but just how the gases escape can affect how easily this thing can be found with radar and other techniques. It's a great plane. The business is huge. They can't get enough parts, and it's going to be a good one for a long time. We also are working on the next generation engine as well, but that's all in development. It'll be, even more performance and more stealth to it. And it's pretty far out there, but we are making the development parts. So if you go to the next one, so that's one of our interesting military programs. And I'll say that we're on almost all military engines, including tank engines, Apache and Black Hawk, as well as every fighter jet that's out there. So this is another one of our interesting programs, and this is not SpaceX. This is Aerojet Rocketdyne, and this is the Space Launch System. And the Space Launch System is the Heavy Payload Deep Space System. So this is the one that's really going to deliver truckloads of parts out to space in order to establish, more turf out there, as well as to eventually put a person on Mars. Unlike the SpaceX, and the SpaceX is great technology, and Howmet has involvement in those as well. Unlike the SpaceX, this is really the most powerful engines in the world. They are non-recoverable, and the intention is to go further, faster. This thing flies at 17,500 miles per hour. I work very closely with the engineers at Aerojet because the parts that Dover is making are the critical engine parts that make this thing work. And it's a variant off of the Space Shuttle engine. And Dover, New Jersey made the parts for every Space Shuttle engine that there was, the RS-25. This is just a variant of that engine. In fact, the first Space Launch System that launched used up some of the Space Shuttle engines that had been left in inventory when that program ended. This is the foundation for Mars. The people at Aerojet are just so excited about this. And I'm hoping this YouTube link will work because I didn't have access to the full file. But there's a million files out there, videos about Aerojet, about Space Launch System. This one I like a lot. It's less than 4 minutes, so I like that. And it really touches every piece of this program in a very nice way, from little kids dreaming of space to seasoned astronauts talking about the importance of exploration, and all the way down to the shop floor. And to me, that connection is really critical. This video was put together by Aerojet to share with suppliers and for employees of suppliers to really understand their role in the mission, because there are people who go to work every day that might just be making a screw or a nut or a bolt, but that's going to get somebody to Mars. And to make that connection to the line worker, I think is pretty important. And that's pretty much all that I have if we want to watch the video, and that's my wrap.
Well, I'm pleased to introduce our last panelist, Marilyn Pettit, who's the Vice President of Operations for Murata. Murata is located in Tawaka, which is in Montville Township in Morris County. Marilyn has extensive experience with operations management, having served in several leadership roles, with oversight over all of Murata's production cells, driving supply chain, purchasing and planning, as well as advanced development activities. She previously served as Vice President of Contracts and Customer Service, where she worked closely with her team to create a culture of exceeding customers' expectations at all levels of the company. During her tenure, Marilyn also assembled and led a team through the development and qualification of the power control unit for the M299 Hellfire Launcher program. Under her leadership, Murata Controls received national recognition for its work on this program as a 2013 Lockheed Martin Supplier of the Year, and also as a U.S. Small Business Administration Regional Subcontractor of the Year. So we're really glad to have her with us today, and glad to have Murata in Morris County. Marilyn.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I thought I'd start off with a couple slides about Murata, and then move into just talking about some of our customer base. And then I spent some time putting together what we've done during the COVID. I thought it was a timely topic to go over, of how we've tried to keep the employees safe and also the disruptions it may have caused, and then a little bit about the future. So Murata is in Montville, New Jersey. We've been 77 years in business. We have always been a private business, still are, family owned. 3 of the brothers are actually on site every day working. One is the CEO, that's Pat. We've seen a large amount of growth from 2010 to 2020, 150 employees to 350 employees. And actually, even with the COVID over the last year, we've still been hiring. Our business has stayed strong. We've done some facility upgrades from 115,000 to 135,000 square feet. We've diversified over the last 10 years from pretty much being a mechanical engineering supplier to a systems supplier, and I've diversified into a lot of electronic production areas. Our business is pretty diversified. We're 27% marine, 28% weapons, 36% space, and 9% aero. So when there is a downturn in certain areas, we've been able to still stay strong. So that's a positive. And if you look at the first slide, it just shows the facility and the growth there. You can change the slide. Did it change? Okay. So Murata has a large engineering team. We designed, the majority of our products are all self-designed by Murata. We support all of the development, qualification, and then go into low rate production and production. Over the past 10 years, we've done a lot of lean manufacturing. We have dedicated production cells for the majority of our larger products. We've optimized our operations. And on the other side of this slide, I just jotted down what are our main product lines. So power electronics, control actuation, flow controls, valve manifolds, and pneumatic systems. And then we do have a diverse customer base. We have grown, so just to give you an idea of some of our customers in each market segment, our marine segment, we primarily deal direct with spare sales to the U.S. government, also on new programs with Electric Boat and Newport News. Our aerospace customers include such primes as Lockheed and Boeing on the F-35 and P-8 programs. In our weapons sector, we deal a lot with Lockheed Martin and have significant new programs in CAS, which is the Control Actuation System team, and power electronics. And in space, we've had a large growth in space due to the commercial space industry. We're involved in numerous programs and numerous customers, such as Aerojet on the RL-10 program, Boeing on the CCT-CAP program, NASA on the SLS program, which we mentioned prior. And we are involved with mostly all commercial space customers, such as Blue Origin, Virgin Orbit, Spaceship Company, among others. Some of the detailed information with a lot of these customers is proprietary as far as what we do, how we do it, but we have significant work in all of these areas. Then I thought we would go into COVID-19 because it is very topical, and what Murata was doing, right? What have we done for our employee base? I thought I'd start off with, as an aside, I am a COVID survivor. I developed COVID in April, end of March, and was hospitalized for 6 days with it. So I'm fine, but I thought I should just bring that up because it is really important for all of us in the manufacturing industry to keep the safety and health of our employees, even though we are essential. That has to be at the top of the list. And I know it is for everyone, but thought I should just mention that. It's deep in my heart about keeping everyone safe, right? So Murata did move quickly to a work from home for the majority of our employees towards the end of March and into April. Engineering, supply chain, finance, program management, all working from home, I'd say. Until July, 60 to 70% of our workforce was work from home, except for my team, the operations team, which obviously that's very difficult to work from home. We have a machine shop, large machine shop. We have 60 A&T technicians. So those people come in every day and have been effective, and we want to keep them safe. And I guess really recently we've started to have people come back 1 or 2 days a week, integrate a little more in the business. So we're probably at 40% work from home. And I know some people feel work from home can't be successful, but I think as long as it's managed well, I found that at Murata, we feel like it has been successful in moving over to a work from home. And then just quickly, we've instituted, I really like the idea of what Richard said, because we're still doing regular temperature checks with thermometer gun as people enter the gates. But we do take temperatures every day. Everyone in the building is masked all day long. We have rules for people outside, and we quarantine people. We did go to 4 10-hour days to give us more opportunity on the weekends for cleaning. So anybody that comes in is here Monday to Thursday for 10-hour days. So Fridays are off-site work only. And then one of the things we did in July was we started putting plexiglass barriers between cubicles where there wasn't exactly 6 feet. And I can tell you, employees love it. They feel safer. So we'll probably even expand that into other areas of the facility. And then the impact we talked about. So what did COVID-19 do to the business? We still had the business. A lot of people had to take advantage of COVID leave, had to take advantage of some of the other items to take care of their family. And some of it was just COVID nervousness. So we probably had 20 technicians out for any length of time. So we did have to maneuver people around. We are behind on some of our customer deliveries, but what we've done with those customers is prioritize their needs, and still through the last quarter, Murata was able to remain at 92% on-time delivery. So kudos to the team here for through a tough time, still being able to keep up. And on the supply chain side, we have had some impacts, but short bursts. I will say that our circuit card suppliers are having some issues with PCBs, and that's because those are being used in the medical industry as well. So they're getting, say, first dibs on that. But other than that, we have been able to work with our suppliers and get the parts that we need in fairly timely manner. And from a recruiting standpoint, also an impact, at least for us, through March, April, May. Hard to get people to submit for jobs, look at resumes. We have seen an uptick recently. And overall in the business, we consistently have trouble with our machine shop and finding machinists. It seems to be a dying art. So we struggle with that area as well. And then just from a future outlook, from a Murata standpoint, we are going to continue doing what we're doing as an essential business, meeting our customer demands, trying to diversify even more. We have a lot of new programs which are healthy. So I think Murata will be in Montville for a long time and successful for a long time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Marilyn.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. Go ahead, Rachel. Forgive me.
No, I was going to say thank you to our panelists, and a reminder to everyone, now's the time for the next half hour or so. Please feel free to send in your questions for the panelists. We have a couple that came in, so I will read them now, but please feel free to continue to send them in. Cliff, what is the normal lag for you in fulfilling orders from the Navy?
Yeah, thanks. Our naval programs are typically very long lead. The products we supply to the Navy on our fabrication side are large steel and aluminum welded enclosures. Typical lead time from time we receive an order to delivery of the first unit would be anywhere from, I would say, 28 to 36 weeks. So that includes our supply chain effort, getting materials in, putting it through the fabrication process, finishing an assembly to deliver a completed unit. Interestingly enough, we run into supply chain issues with things like long lead hardware. Sometimes a captive fastener could sometimes take anywhere from 20 to 30 weeks to get delivered. There are sometimes batch requirements for the paint. We have specific paints that we have to use. So, and then our contracts will deliver anywhere over a period of time from 12 to 18 months. So on the fabrication side, we've got a very long sell cycle and very long cycle time on completing a contract, which is good because when you win the programs, that means we've got work for folks. And if you follow what's been going on with the Navy over the past, say, 4, 5, 6 years, the Navy has made a big effort to go from a fleet of what was somewhere in the neighborhood of 230, 240 ships. Initially was going to go up to 290, 300, and then the focus was to try and build up a fleet of about 350 ships. I think that's come down a little bit, but regardless, our activity with our customers on the naval side has been significantly higher over the past couple of years, and I believe the shipbuilding will continue on going forward. So that's sort of a long-winded answer to our cycle time, but also understanding that a naval ship doesn't get built in just a couple of months. It takes several years to build a Navy ship.
Thank you. Rich, we've read a lot about the issues at Boeing and the grounding of their 737 MAX. How do they manage relationships with their suppliers and vendors?
That's a good one. What they're fortunate about is that that's the LEAP engine, which is a new high efficiency engine that's GE and Safran's a consortium. And there were a lot of production delays on the engine. So there were backlogs. If you remember, prior to them having those two unfortunate incidents with the plane, you probably saw pictures of 737 MAXs on the runway with no engines. I think in the Wall Street Journal, they said Boeing is now making gliders because there were no engines to put on those planes. And so for probably the first 6 months since the program was shut down, the engine building kept going because none of these problems were with the engine. It was really the controls and the avionics, the software. But so for about 6 months, there were no changes. The engine build kept going, and it sort of just got caught up. But since then, that program is definitely stalled. But we are getting signals now. GE's the primary that we work with, and we're definitely getting signals for higher demands getting started into the first quarter of next year. So I think that things will go well. But Boeing is an important. The thing about aerospace is that there are only a couple of big plane builders and only a handful of big engine builders, and so you have to help each other through the good times and the bad times. And you know, they helped us through when we couldn't keep up with their demand, and we're helping them. We've got parts within Howmet that were on order, and now they're kind of frozen in place waiting. But we're all in it together, and it'll be a good plane. It'll come back. It's a great engine. But thankfully, the relationships are strong, and we're just all going to get through it together.
Great, thank you. Another question, have you created any programs or outreach to encourage younger people or youth to consider manufacturing as a career? And I guess this is for all panelists.
Our case for Howmet is that we try to get active within STEM programs in local high schools, and it even goes younger now. And we'll send engineers out to make presentations and just try to let the younger people know what's out there.
Yeah, and from the NJIT, NJII side, we work very closely with the Bari Shah and the STEM outreach program from Picatinny. Last summer, we sponsored 48 students, both on the Picatinny campus and off campus at Natick Labs up in Massachusetts, and also down at the Joint Base. So we're very actively involved with that project.
Yeah, prior to the pandemic, we would go out to the vocational and technical schools and make presentations to some of the classes there. We hosted a couple of tours last year before the end of the year for not only some of the high school students, but some of the students who take classes in evenings, some of the post-high school students, and that's been rewarding because you really bring people out of the classroom and into the facility so they can see what it looks like to be in an actual manufacturing facility versus a classroom. And we all know that get into the real world, it's a little bit different than the classroom. So, we found that not only a good way to promote the industry, but also as a good recruiting tool to reach out to students that you might not normally be able to get in touch with and potentially hire.
Okay. Also to all the panelists, we're in an election year. Could you comment on the experiences with the Pentagon spending as the election nears and spending trends based on your prior experience when administrations have changed?
Yeah, Rachel, that's a really good point. And regardless of who you believe should be in the White House in the fall, any change in administration, we've seen a slowdown in defense spending, where if there's a change from one administration to the next, the new administration wants to evaluate the programs that are in place and maybe make sure priorities are in alignment with what they feel are the important areas to do. So quite potentially, if there is a change in administration, there could be a small pause. I don't think it would be long-term, but there could be a small pause. In Falstrom Company's business, because of the long-term nature of the contracts and our delivery cycle being so long-term, we don't see a huge ripple effect from that. But if the time to evaluate priorities takes longer than a couple of months, that could ripple through into production disruption and slowing of our production line. But seeing as the Department of Defense is our largest customer, anything that occurs down in Washington in terms of a pause or change in priority or administrations could ripple through to our manufacturing floor and has done so in the past.
Yeah, I have a couple comments on this, and I don't want to make it political, but you know, we have a lot of engines out there on the older fighter jets, all the way back to F-16s and even older F-100s, and I happen to have a brother who's a colonel in the Air Force, and he's been over aircraft maintenance for his whole career. And you know, I would say that, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, they were actually going out and taking spare parts off of planes that were like in a graveyard, trying to get engines rebuilt in order to put them back up in the air. And his whole job is to keep planes in the air and keep the pilots safe in them. And I would say that in the last couple of years, that's improved quite a bit. And I don't know what the timing is on budgeting, so I don't want to say it's because of, you know, this party or another party, but it's there's definitely a difference. And then another point, and this is back to the space side of it, you know, we all hear a lot more about space. We have the Space Force. I don't know how many people noticed this, but I was flipping channels a couple months ago, and I happened to stumble on the graduation at the Air Force Academy, and one of the things they pointed out was that 85% of the cadets chose to go into the Space Force rather than the Air Force after graduation. So there's a lot going on in space, and how that and obviously government funding is going to be a big part of that. There's a lot going on with China and Russia, so I think there's definitely going to be some political impact on what happens with space going forward. It's not a cheap date, and it's an important defense strategy. So we'll see, but it's a factor, I think.
You know, Rich, you make a great comment, and I call it the Pentagon pie. When you start to look at all the services and looking at what comes out of DoD, that is a very, very competitive environment.
Got another. Are you experiencing any difficulty hiring for production positions?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Has been a problem for several years, and we end up investing a lot in training. In fact, as John knows, we're taking advantage of some of the courses offered through MEP right now for blueprint reading, lean manufacturing to help educate our workforce. And so what we're finding is that we really do have to hire lower skilled people and then bring them and train them on the job. Because at least at Falstrom Company, and I think a lot of smaller manufacturers, our manufacturing processes and the things that we make require sort of a specialized skill set. And while you might be able to get a base level of education through training at either a vocational technical school or perhaps some of the county colleges, manufacturing technology classes, once you get into the manufacturing environment, your job classification does require a specific skill set, a specific set of knowledge that can really be only developed over a period of time, and that was to my point about the tribal knowledge and transfer of knowledge and how that's becoming increasingly critical, at least at Falstrom Company, as the aging employees who have that knowledge and that skill set start to move on to retirement. You know, we're looking at ways that we can capture that information and make sure that it gets transferred over to the next generation of employees.
And if I may add to what Cliff and others have said, you know, this is a systemic issue in the industry. It's not just New Jersey. We estimate there's 33,000 open manufacturing jobs in New Jersey alone, and they're talking about several million across the country. So these are issues, but, you know, we are working not only MEP, but NJIT and County College of Morris and Essex, et cetera. We are trying to work together to create pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships so that, to Cliff's point, you get them to a certain level, and then there's on-the-job training that has to be included. But there also has to be pathways, and that's what we've partnered with, especially County College of Morris, Essex County College, NJIT, to help create pathways so that people that want to get college education can get a college education. The people that want to get extended technical education can get that. All education is good, and it all doesn't come with a degree. So there's some pretty awesome programs that have been ongoing, but it's also changing the mindset. If you ask people, they say, well, I think that's great for your child, but for my child, he's got to go to college. Well, when does college start? At age 18? Well, it might start at age 25. What difference does it make as long as somebody's developing a phenomenal career path? And, we've had the blessing to work with companies like Murata and Fallstrom and Howmet to Arconic to Alcoa back to Howmet. So all good.
And I'll bring up that to echo what John talked about. Dr. Kennedy is familiar with the Midas program that we've linked up with Penn College. It revolves right around that, Cliff, to be able to provide that pre-skill audit so that you know what you're getting when they come through the front door, and then you've got the ability to modify that program to meet the skills that you need. So I mean that's a new program with NJIT, but we're working with John and his folks to be able to provide that.
All right. We are a custom cable company, wire harness manufacturer in New Jersey, heavy DoD experience. What's the best way to engage with your supply chain process to share capabilities info?
Okay. Well, I'll start out. I mean, we have cables that have been designed, and sometimes our cable manufacturers are actually called out on the drawing, so we don't have a lot of ability to move from one supplier to another. However, what we have found, and I think we'll pose this question, is the best way is to find out new programs, talk with people at events like this, and see if you can get your particular skill set on the radar screen of some of the business development folks, so that as cables and harnesses are spec'd out, they can be designed into the product. And cable manufacturing, if you're doing molded cables, that's one thing. If you're doing just some basic power cables with a commercial connector, that's another thing. So requirements vary from program to program, but my suggestion would be to look at development programs and try and find out where those programs are landing.
Yeah, Cliff, it's Jim Hannon. Yeah, and we'd be amenable to coordinating efforts with a bunch of stakeholders, that if there's a easy, and I guess it's not easy dealing with the government procurement, but certainly, we could serve as a facilitator on a future seminar if there's, it sounds like there's ample demand for it too.
Sure.
Well, there is, and that's part of the, NJMEP is one of 51. And we work very closely with the DoD and the NDAA and so on and so forth. And one of the things that's come out of not only COVID, but the tariffs, et cetera, is the fact that we have a very, and please forgive this engineering term, crappy supply chain in the United States and in New Jersey. And we don't do as well in New Jersey as other states, so we don't tie in some of our incredible companies. We have about 11,000 manufacturers. I am currently working on a bill with several, with Senator Booker, Senator Menendez, Congressman Gottheimer, Congressman Sherrill, a federal bill to push towards creating state by state to federal supply chains, so that we actually can, instead of panicking when we don't have PPE, we can go to the 5 or 6 companies that we know can retool and make them. And these are problems, especially in DoD. I think Rich brought it up about, spare parts. I mean, I have friends that work on the same levels as his friends and his brother, and these are part of the issues. But we've got to solve it for New Jersey, because New Jersey gets 51 cents on a dollar back from every dollar we send for federal taxes. We are the lowest. So we've got to get our act together first, and it's very important. And Jim, you guys with what your efforts, and Megan and our Somerset friends, you guys play an important role in that. And I'll shut up and
No, all good, John. All good. And thanks for mobilizing everybody too. Rachel, back to you on any questions. We have some open time.
Yep, we have a few more. Can someone talk about the NIST requirements for cybersecurity in the defense industry?
Okay. That's a hot topic right now. CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And so whoever asked that question is right on it, because it's an evolving part of the industry right now, with some requirements, as we see it, similar to the NIST requirements. And I'm sure Helmet and Murata are working through the compliance for this as well. But what's unique on this compared to NIST is that you're actually going to have to go out and get certified that your cybersecurity is effective and meets requirements. And there's varying levels. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And we've had to make some investments not only in our hardware to increase our hardware, and again, not to be a shameless plugger of NJMEP, but they have helped us with a resource for a small company like Fallstrom to make that compliance. We've found a resource through them that is working with us to make sure that what we had for NIST can map over to CMMC, and that we've got the right policies in place. And I don't know if anybody knows where that whole process is at. I haven't followed it lately, but there were some milestones that were to have been met, such as developing the requirements for a auditor to become a certified auditor, and then flowing that out to the community in terms of who the auditors were and how would you go about getting audited. I don't know if any of the other panels, anybody else has that information. I haven't seen a lot on that lately. Anybody know where that's at?
Well, I saw John shaking his head. So
I do, but I'm trying to be quiet before Jim has a taser, and every time he sees me, he zaps me with it. MEP is part of NIST, the MEP program. So we've been working very closely, and NJMEP under Rob Stromauer's direction has been going. A lot of this is lagging behind, as you know, Cliff. Most of the dates have been missed, but it's getting more and more concerned because of certain of our friends across the world, China and Russia and so on. If they can tap into a small company in New Jersey, they can go all the way up to, who's making the F-35, Lockheed Martin, right? So there are programs, and it's moving forward. One of the things that we've been able to do is secure some funds to offset some for smaller companies to do this, but this is going to be changing. And part of the reason for a federal supply chain is to ensure that companies meet these requirements, or you will lose your contracts eventually. It's not going to happen immediately. It's nothing to be, crazy about, but it's going to happen because they can't, they're struggling with some of these problems. Actually, there was talking about a breach with Lockheed Martin recently, and they're a big guy. So it's a scary situation, but we're also getting a lot of calls about this from Chanel and L'Oreal, and as my wife explained to me, Chanel number 5 is probably worth billions of dollars, so they certainly want to protect that as well. So I mean, it's hitting all of us at this point.
And I think to Cliff's point about who's going to certify, that becomes another political football back and forth, because whoever the certifier is also going to have to indemnify or accept liabilities that are associated with a breach.
Okay, next question. Bill, what area do you see the most innovation, and where do you see the most significant developments coming from?
So I'll give you what we found out with ADAPT. additive manufacturing, transformative manufacturing, and manufacturing of flexible electronics down the road is going to be huge, because it looks at what Cliff talked before about size, weight, and power, but also looks at form, fit, and function. And when you start to take a function and backward plan about where it's going to sit and how it's going to be powered, there's a significant reduction in volume. I know from Pratt Whitney, I think it's the 531, no, it's 531 parts in one of the jet engines. They were able to reduce to 511 through advanced and additive manufacturing, and that was huge. And if you think about those parts that would have to be stored on shelves, it impacts the entire supply chain. So I think that's where we're going.
Okay, Marilyn, what's next for SpaceX? What are their goals over the next 2 years?
To go to Mars. Actually,
One way?
they're what?
One way?
Yeah, no. Right. I know the people that we deal with there, that is their top priority, though of course all the launches are what's going to get them there. Right now it's continuous launches with the Falcon 9, and Murata has significant work with SpaceX, and yeah, I think Elon basically wants to go to Mars, and that's his #1 priority.
Any particular time frame, Marilyn? Just following up out of curiosity.
Well, if you talk to him, he wants to do it in a couple of years, but a lot of people are kind of poo-pooing that and being like it's going to take, 5 to 10 years. But with him, you can never doubt him, right?
Predict the unpredictable. So.
Yep.
And another question, can the NJII speak to the development of advanced materials required for space exploration?
So I think if you look at all of the current processes by my colleagues that are on the panel today, that there's a great deal of work going on in the material sciences and in processes associated with additive manufacturing, where it was voodoo before. But now if you look at metals and metal materials that are being used in additive manufacturing, it was unthought of before. I think earlier Richard talked about the wax function and forming. We've actually done that to be able to facilitate additive manufacturing of metal parts, and those metal parts are being used. Those parts in transition are being used now in tests for viability against the way they were normally either injection molded or cast. So again, I think that's a huge development that's on the horizon.
Yeah,
Any closing comments? Yeah, Rich, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah, the LEAP engine that is in that 737 Supermax is a GE engine and the consortium, and that actually uses a 3D printed fuel injector that they make in a facility in Alabama. And I would say that, not every part will be additive, but there's a lot of additive opportunity out there. I will say on the Howmet side, we have a research center in Michigan, and we develop new alloys and we develop coatings of alloys, and the coatings are every bit as important as the metals to how they work in the environments that are out there. But yeah, materials is everything. Everything is smaller, lighter, thinner, more efficient, and under harsher environments. So it's a tough combination.
Well, thank you for the debrief. I feel bad I should have spent more time focusing on high school chemistry and the metallurgic view of the world. But my dad always said, well, you'll find steady employment in accounting. So that's the road I took. I'd like to turn the mic over to Chris Edwards. He is the new president of the Somerset County Business Partnership, one of the founding members of this cabinet. And Chris, you've been a little busy since you took office in March of 2020. So I'll turn the mic over to you. And thanks for all the support and keeping the business community together on a number of levels down in Somerset County. Chris?
Thanks, Jim. I had some really good timing taking over the partnership in early March of 2020. I'm sure a lot of you on the program knew Mike Kerwin. He led the business partnership efforts on this front the last few years. And, you know, I just want to thank the panel. This was a really great education for myself. I took down a lot of notes as far as where I want to take the business partnership in the future. For those of you who don't know the business partnership, we're a Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development, and tourism organization, all wrapped into one in Somerset County. We have about 800 members, a lot of members in the manufacturing industry, as John Kennedy mentioned earlier in the program. And a bunch of things that kind of came to my mind was we've spent a lot of time, as Jim knows, in attracting and retaining talent for our employers in Somerset County. One of the projects we did with Sanofi a couple of years ago was training their recruiters on how to sell Somerset County when they're going out and attracting talent into their company. And I'd like to bring that, you know, to more of our manufacturers going forward. So we've started mentorship programs in some of the high schools. One of the things I know we're looking at is how do we get people who were in the tourism, the hospitality industry, who were largely displaced right now, how do we get them back working? And I think, you know, a lot of the conversations are centered around other industries like manufacturing. How can we get those folks the training they need to find a new career path if they're choosing to pivot during the era of COVID. So there's a lot of things we're working on, and like I said, this was a really great education for me. So I want to thank Jim for including us in this, and the panel, and Megan as well for everything you're doing to the north. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, any closing comments? If I'll turn it over to the panel. Cliff, Marilyn, Bill, Rich, thank you once again for your support of the program. With no closing comments, then I suspect that we are convened for the day. And on behalf of our cabinet, certainly nothing would give us more pleasure than to foster some type of business relationship that comes out of our programs and virtual networking. So keep that in mind going forward. We'll certainly publish the session that we've recorded today for future reference if any of your colleagues at your respective companies were unable to join us, and we'll take it from there. So I would ask everybody to be safe, be smart, and stay dry if that's at all possible in the tri-state New York, New Jersey area today. So thanks so much, and appreciate the support, and you're all essential in our books. So keep it going, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel,
Great.
for all your help.
Thank you, Jim.